GM. Today I'm going to be talking about altcoin cycles, so let's get into it right away. So in a full cycle, after BTC makes its all-time highs, it's just euphoria. It makes it's 400, 500%. Then there's going to be a lot of money left in the markets, right? So one thing that's going to happen is that others is going to make a new all-time high relative to BTC because let's just take a comparison here. So that's how it looks like. There's going to be a sort of rotation into alts because just there's a lot of money in stake. So it's going to be like 100%. This is usually euphoria. Here we got euphoria. And this is very late cycle plays. So one thing that's currently happening is that there's currently a breakout happening. This is not rules based. This is just TA, which I don't like, but hey, that's how it is. We can apply a trend indicator to others. Let's see here. Trend protocol. Yes, universal protocol. Let's load it up. So as you can see, trend following others is actually quite successful in catching altcoin trends. If you don't want to rely on the fact that there's usually an altcoin euphoria at the very late stages of a market cycle, you can just trend follow others. Something that you can do here during this period is to very much catch alts. You need to catch whatever's currently pumping. It's very much a high probability of success type of environment here. You can get some fails, but overall, the system actually works pretty good. Others is not an asset, but according to this indicator, it's done a 30,000x just following the rules of trend following. So you can even zoom out and try to do a 3-day analysis. So of course the profit is lower, however we're catching trends a lot cleaner. Here we got a full liquidity uptrend here, another here, and the last one here. So all liquidity waves impact the market, and all liquidity waves will hit the altcoin market. However, something that you must remember is that this is others, okay? Why do we shitcoin? Why do we altcoin? Because we want to beat BTC. BTC is basically the barometer of the crypto market. However, if you really want to get ahead of BTC, so one thing we could do is to do others divided by BTC. And now what we are seeing is very much how altcoins do related to BTC. One thing that you must remember is that, of course, you can get a lot of long signals on others. However, are we beating BTC most of the time? All the way since 2022, the answer has been not. Actually, if you check the sort of liquidity waves that have happened on BTC, you are going to find that most of them are unsuccessful. What I mean by unsuccessful is that they do hit the market, but they are getting tinier and tinier and less powerful. This is one. What are we? That's one. This is one. And this was the last liquidity wave. Very much low, sort of underwhelming trends. And that means that basically there's sort of an altcoin inflation, so to speak. What do I mean by altcoin inflation? It's the fact that during this environment, there were so many altcoins out there. Everything was pumping, 1000x, 100x. However, there's just too many altcoins out there. There's Farcoin and Pepe and Trump coin or whatever. There's just too much, and people are wise enough now to realize that shitcoining is not good for the soul. Shitcoining is not great unless you, of course, have a rule set for it. So the cycle's not going to repeat itself. You must search coins. Okay. So, for example, here's one principle for it. If you pull up Farcoin, you're going to realize that this period, all the way here, was very much a euphoria moment for Farcoin, especially in a time where the market was very much suffering from the tariff crash, and well, it was a liquidity crunch, but we'll call it the tariff period. Here we had, the lowest point of it. Farcoin didn't care, so this was a fantastic moment for it. It very much performed without any external output relating to liquidity. So that's one thing you gotta look for, because others dominance is gonna get tinier and tinier, and it's just going to reduce, because there are not going to be thousands and thousands of altcoins in the future. It's only going to get tinier and tinier. So something like Farcoin, it already did its thing. It outperformed whenever Bitcoin didn't. And now, you could get a successful long. However, I don't think it's going to do this in the scale of, traveling there to like $5 or something. I don't think so. You're better off just rotating majors or looking yourself for other coins. You can get to CoinGecko and start traveling through the page and try to, find the most fundamental coins, like coins with good fundamentals, right? You should not invest in coins that are, not diluted, or owners having a web of wallets where they own more than 50%. There's a lot of scams out there. There's a lot of shitcoins that you should not touch, not even with a 10-inch football. And that's where you have to do your own diligence. Okay. There's a concept of doing altcoin rotations. However, as I said, you can get an altcoin that very much outperform. And if you included this in an altcoin rotation system of some sort, it's of course going to be fantastic during this period, because it did it by 100%. And most of all didn't. Most of all suffered a lot. So you're cheating yourself. You're cheating yourself if you're putting Farcoin on a rotation system, because of course you're going to add it way after this has happened. This is something that sort of reminds me of Solana. If you remember Solana, this period was fantastic for the coin. It did 1,000%. People expected more of Sol, especially during this period, whenever M2 was just popping off and telling us to go risk on. The trend was so strong here. If you managed to swing trade all of these moments, it was great. 50%. Yep, 50% around this period if you sort of successfully swing traded around this period. And it did not do that here. In fact, many other coins outperform, like Doge. Let's pull up Doge. Yep. So very much weaker coins like Doge did not perform at all here, like 30%. However, in the full uptrend, of course, it did 300%. That's why you can have rotation systems with coins that have a lot of time series. Like Doge goes way back. Doge is all 2013, December 2013. So you can apply these coins, but you're just gonna cheat yourself if you're adding a very much a new coin that outperformed whenever the market didn't. This, for example, you got FAT. I think FAT is a worthwhile coin to look at, because it trends sort of nicely, like here and there, and the volatility is just supreme. Let's take a look at this period, like 1,000%. if Fed were to go back to all-time highs, it would be a more than 1,000 percent profit. So that's the things you gotta be looking at. For example, AKT or Akash, I think it's called. This coin also had its special moments, as you can see. This was a liquidity option, like BTC peaked here. However, it just never recovered. That was the top. And of course, that wasn't top for BTC for a long time. This was here. And BTC went along to do far greater things than Akash. So you can have coins that were fantastic and had done thousands and thousands of percent and were, useful. They were useful. There were a lot of utility from rotating these coins. However, now I don't think it's going to go far. And if it did, well, 300%, it could actually perform, but the goal, the pole is very much far away. Like, do you think it's worthy of doing more than 1,000%? Maybe, but I'm not going to hold my breath for it. I'm actually just gonna look for coins with great fundamentals and great technicals. Remember, Akash, I don't remember what Akash did, but I think it's a sort of utility coin, as people like to say, and great fundamentals, 2000%. Great fundamentals, minus 90%. So having basic fundamentals of a coin, not being a scam, having known owners that have been along in the crypto space for a long time, it's just square one. Do not base a good fundamental over technicals. Good technicals is the coin outperforming against BTC, having a very much a slightly long time frame. At least that's what I expect of a coin I'm going to rotate it into. Let's actually look at AKT BTC. The chart might just be the same as regular cash because the scale is so massive. So it's actually worse if you look at the cash BTC ratio. So I do recommend holding all coins against the barometer that is this, the BTC chart, because if you're not going to be holding BTC, you're going to be holding something a lot riskier. And if it's riskier, then hold a very high standard to it. A lot of shitcoins just pump and it's going to generate these long signals that will probably not be successful. Let's see here. Yeah, it's going to jump you around here or there, depending on your threshold. But again, it's not going to be a successful rotation. Something that I do recommend is maybe getting a simple moving average. Let's load one up. And doing a 200 period one. Maybe you can filter through bear markets. But here, very much Akash is successful in existing as a competitive coin. However, if it just loses its 200-day time frame for a long time, then it's probably not worthwhile even looking at it. Akash must retake these levels, which it's more than 100%. So that's not going to happen in one day. You have a lot of time. There's a lot of time you can wait for these coins to basically move up against BTC again. And that's pretty much a pretty cool trick to use a 200-day moving average for these ratios. For example, let's take a look at WIF. We all remember dog WIF hat. And wow, it's actually pretty bad. I don't think this is going to perform at all against BTC. WIF USDT / BTC USDT. Yeah, no, not at all. It was never that good to begin with. It sort of retook the 200 moving average, but it's just grind it till it lost it again. So not worth it at all. Not worth it at all. Let's take a look at Fat BTC because that's one coin I just told you earlier to take a good look at. And of course, it's way below its 200-day moving average. You know, here you can get a pretty good rotation. If you were to follow a protocol, let's see here. Yep. So you can actually maybe create a personal filter if you were to rotate, because, okay, we got Fat BTC and the price is, well, the ratio chart is above the 200-day moving average, and you get a long signal on a rotation system. Well, you can very much win here, win big. And if you exit according to the system, well, great. Of course, you can actually get some wins below the 200-day moving average, but do not hold your breath. I mean, it's very much a small win. But again, we're above the 200-day moving average. This win is a lot cleaner, okay? It actually gets you, it actually exits you in a sort of win here. Let's see here. And of course here, you're way above the 200-day moving average and you get a long signal. Everything is great. Well, this exit is kind of bad, but you win overall. Another trick that you can apply is using rotation systems. You can check the coins and their respective scores. So let's take a look at my rotation system, which, you know, right now is just doing nothing. Of course, the crypto market has suffered quite a lot. And if we take a look at the score screener, we are seeing coins ranked in terms of, you know, the best at the moment. Right now, BTC is at number 3. However, at better moments, I believe the BTC score should be a lot lower and maybe take the 4th place. If you take, 4th place, we can move around. Whenever you have like 4 coins outperforming BTC in a rotation system table score screener, then this is very much a high confidence sort of signal that you're very much risk on and you need to be rotating altcoins. Let's see this period, which was very much successful in catching a pretty nice rotation trend. Yeah, BTC is at, what is this? 5th place. So that's even another layer you can apply to sort of filter altcoin trend markets. So to sum it up, you very much can use universal trend following systems to try to filter others and filter certain altcoins. However, you must keep in mind that there's a lot of factors that need to line up for you to make money in a probable manner, because you can get a long signal on one coin. However, if others is short, BTC is risk off, you might just catch a pump and dump and lose 40%, 50% of your portfolio if you were to just choose that coin and go along with it. So pick your systems. One thing I could actually show here is you can create a lot of breadth indicators. Here's, I don't know, I don't use them a lot, but here's one. So here's a breadth indicator, 40 coins, and it's applying a 200-day moving, simple moving average, as I just did with some other tickers a couple moments ago. So this indicator is just detecting how many of these 40 coins are above the 200-day moving average. And as we can see, there's great periods being sort of detected here. Here, where else? There. This one is a bit sad because October 10th ended with the eradication of altcoins. However, I don't think it's going to happen twice in a row. But these are very much periods where You can lurk for altcoins and accumulate altcoins. Maybe even you can try to do a sort of oversold accumulation. You got one here. Let me color them. Yeah, one accumulation signal here, here, there. How about here? Right, so you can even use this as a sort of altcoins are so messed up that we can accumulate them slightly. Actually, this one's it's been pretty bad, like a pretty sort of extinction period. However, that's one way to sort of track. That's one way to sort of track the altcoin momentum, which is pretty nice. So there's a lot of criteria that you can create to sort of track these altcoin periods. It's not all about trend following. It's not all about breadth. It's just catching a lot of great opportunities based on the aggregation of a lot of signals. Remember, the market is all about stacking probabilities on your upside. So just doing TA on one coin, sure, it can work. However, is that beating BTC at the moment? Will you get a far higher reward for not a lot of extra risk based on BTC? That's what you have to take a pretty good look at, because the market is not an easy place, especially the altcoin market, because it's just shrinking, and I do not believe this cycle is going to go higher than this level or here. It could, however, it's going to be based on certain coins that are going to outperform. So don't hold your breath. Your breath for a 200% expansion. You have to take a pretty good look at the coins of the moment. You can again lurk on CoinGecko for something that's growing. Maybe you can use a platform like Nansen AI for basically telling you if a coin has a good score for good fundamentals. Remember, good fundamentals don't mean anything if the technicals are bad. You can even get a good performing trending coin with very bad fundamentals. That's one thing you gotta remember. And with that, that's the lesson for today. I hope you get some knowledge out of it, because without any rules, you're fucked. That's what here at MMH we're trying to educate people of. Rules, good setups, systemized trades, and all of that. So with that said, GM.